Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Today I want to cover the case of the Queen and Richard Sr. Now, Richard Sr. is a police officer who's been found guilty of a number of corruption-related offenses. However, this is a fairly complicated story. This is probably going to be part one of several. The decision is 188 pages, and I'm going to skip over as much of that as I can, but we do need to cover a lot of it in order to get the full picture. One of the important things on this is that this isn't the end of the story. It's not going from a finding of guilt to sentencing. It's going from a finding of guilt to an application to have this declared the result of entrapment. So if that's successful, it may never go to sentencing. The successful entrapment finding will end the case. So that's really interesting here. I kind of expected when I first heard of all of this on the news, I kind of thought that this was going to be one of these sort of simple stories where you're like, yeah, they got a bad cop and, justice is served and everybody's happy. It's way more complicated than that. This is actually kind of a bit of a spy story. So I've got myself a martini here and let's dig in on this one. It's really fascinating. I'm kind of excited to go through this one with you. So again, Queen and Richard Sr., and there's a restriction on publication here, but it's not a full ban. What this is it's a restriction that prevents anything that might reveal the identities of UC1 or UC2, which is undercover operator number 1 or undercover operator number 2. And UC2 is testifying under the pseudonym of Henry Wong. And that's because he was pretending to be an organized crime figure. So nothing that reveals those things can be published. This judgment was edited to comply with that. And I don't know anything about who those people are, so I'm not really going to be in a position to violate that publication ban. But it's worth noting in case you have information, don't post it. All right, reasons for decision. Overview. Richard Sr. is charged with 14 separate offenses, including theft under $5,000, uttering forged document, 2 counts. Unauthorized use of a computer, 2 counts. Breach of trust, 3 counts. Possession of firearm obtained by theft. Possession of weapon for purposes dangerous to the public peace. Attempted robbery, trafficking in a Schedule 1 substance, and trafficking in a Schedule 4 substance, 2 counts. Richard Sr. is a constable with the York Regional Police with the badge number 1553. During the time frame of the indictment, Constable Sr. was assigned the 5-district community-oriented response unit, 5 Corps, and Markham. By the relevant time frame, Constable Sr. had been a police officer for approximately 15 years. Now, I believe that Constable Sr. is on suspension, and I believe that's a paid suspension, but I'm not certain on that. On October 9th, 2018, Constable Sr. was arrested in relation to allegations stemming from a YRP investigation known as Project Tattoo, as part of which 2 officers were working in an undercover capacity. Undercover 1 was deployed in an undercover capacity to act as Constable Sr.'s partner in 5 Corps. So this is his co-worker. And, a police officer's partner works very closely with them. It's a very close and sort of intimate relationship. So having that, think about that when we look at this going forward, because that's somebody on whom, your life may depend. If somebody pulls a gun on you, you need to be able to trust that your partner has your back. So that is that's sort of a big deal as we think about this and as we consider what's going on here. So they were both the same rank, both constables, and according to Undercover 1, he had no authority to direct or give orders to Constable Sr. I want you to think a little bit about that as we go ahead as well. He had been doing undercover work since 2005. To qualify for such undercover work, he took 1 week of regular training and 2 weeks of advanced training. Undercover 1 had a Section 25 designation, which was approved on July 14th, 2017, and expired on July 14th, 2020, which was marked as Exhibit 11. Section 25.1 sub 2 of the Criminal Code states, "It is in the public interest to ensure that public officers may effectively carry out their law enforcement duties in accordance with the rule of law, and to that end to expressly recognize in law a justification for public officers and other persons acting at their direction to commit acts or omissions that would otherwise constitute offenses." So what this is it's a broad provision for undercover operators who may need to commit crimes in order to function as an undercover operator. If you are embedded, for instance, and trying to blend in with some organized crime group, and they say, hey, we are going to break into this place, you can't really say, oh, no, guys, I can't do that. That would be a crime. Or if, somebody says, hey, we need you to take this cocaine from one place to another, you're like, oh, hey, that's a crime. Well, how are you going to successfully function in an organized crime, setting? Clearly you're not. So that's what that provision is for. It's to allow this kind of undercover operation. So UC2, an RCMP officer using the pseudonym Henry, was deployed in an undercover capacity to pose as a mid-level Asian organized crime figure and confidential human source. This officer had worked for the RCMP for just over 20 years and had worked in undercover operations for 15 years. He was also trained as a cover person/handler. Authorizations to intercept private communications pursuant to Part 6 of the Criminal Code were issued and not challenged at this trial. Numerous conversations between Constable Senior and these two undercover officers, as well as some others, formed a large part of this trial and will be referred to in detail. They also go through a listing of various databases. I'm not going to cover that here. That would take a while, but they include CPIC, and there's directions here. All of these databases come with something that basically says you can't misuse this information. You can't use it for anything other than official police business. So you're not supposed to use it to check up on people you know. You're not supposed to use it for anything improper. All right, and there's lots of this talking about some of these other directives and other databases. So during the time frame of the indictment, Constable Senior was friends, acquaintances, and/or colleagues with a number of people who will be referenced in these reasons, including... Now, they're going to go through a number of names here. I'm going to skip over most of them. However, I will point out Fabian Wills. Now, if you watched my previous video, which was sort of the whetting your appetite for this one, it was dealing with a Ms. Petrolo, then you'll remember the name Fabian Wills. However, if you haven't watched that one, maybe that's one to check out. Anyway, I'm skipping over the names here as mentioned. The allegations and charges are grouped into 7 different events as follows. The confidential human source payments and receipts. Theft under $5,000 and utter forged document. Constable Senior is alleged to have kept money that he was given to pay confidential human sources, specifically Henry Wong, posing as a confidential human source consisting of 2 payments of $1,000 each, and David Broadhead, the source name he placed on an intelligence report related to Sherry Wafer and family, consisting of 1 payment of $300. The total amount of the theft is therefore alleged to be $2,300. Further, Constable Senior is alleged to have uttered a forged document in submitting payment receipts signed by Henry in circumstances where Constable Senior kept the money, and in submitting a payment receipt forged by his friend Fabian Wills by having Mr. Wills place David Broadhead's signature on the form to indicate Mr. Broadhead had received payment for the information. So there's a lot going on there. Basically, Henry is said to have signed a document, but Constable Senior kept the money. And he is said to have also got his friend Fabian Wills to sign a document with somebody else's name, a David Broadhead, to indicate that Mr. Broadhead had received payment, which in fact he didn't. That is said to have gone to Constable Senior. That is a whole complicated story, and we'll get to it, but it's complicated. The confidential source documents. Utter forged document, count 2. Constable Senior is alleged to have authored and submitted an intelligence report about his ex-intimate partner, Sherry Wafer, and her family by falsely attributing his personal knowledge to another individual, David Broadhead. License plate queries. Unauthorized use of a computer, count 4, and breach of trust, count 5. Constable Senior is alleged to have conducted CPIC queries for improper purposes for his friend/steroid dealer, George Paputzos, and for Henry Wong. Again, Henry Wong is an undercover cop. In relation to George Paputzos, Constable Senior is alleged to have arranged through Constable Timur Bilatov to run a license plate for Mr. Paputzos and then disclose this information to Mr. Paputzos. As for Henry Wong, Constable Senior is alleged to have run a license plate for Henry Wong and then took a picture of the results of the query with Henry Wong's phone. The drug warehouse. Constable Senior is alleged to have planned and progressed past mere preparation to rob a drug warehouse that Henry Wong had advised him about, in which he anticipated that there would be several kilograms of cocaine and cash. Attempted robbery, count 8. In preparation for this robbery, Constable Senior is alleged to have stolen and placed a loaded shotgun in the back of a rental van, and that's a loaded police shotgun, as part of that attempted robbery. Possession of firearm obtained by theft, possession of weapon for a dangerous purpose. Further, Constable Senior is alleged to have offered to traffic the cocaine he expected to find in the warehouse to George Paputzos, Michael Vigliotti, and Henry Wong. Trafficking in a scheduled substance, count 9. So that's a heck of an allegation. And this one, or at least some of these, he's not going to be found guilty of. So just so you're aware. The intelligence report. Constable Senior is alleged to have advised Michael Vigliotti that he was under police investigation. He's alleged to have obtained this information from a fake intelligence report that was brought to his attention by Detective Mike DePlacido as part of the undercover operation. Breach of trust, count 10. The steroids. Constable Senior is alleged to have trafficked testosterone and steroids to his colleague and friend, Constable Timur Timberlatov, and to undercover operator number 1. Trafficking in Schedule 4 substance, counts 11 and 12. Improper use of police computers and disclosure. These counts allege that Constable Senior, for personal reasons, improperly accessed, count 13, unauthorized use of computer, and disclosed, count 14, breach of trust, confidential information from CPIC and YRP databases. The counts relate to queries specified and found in ASF number 4, exhibit number 4. So ASF would be agreed statement of facts. Specifically, with respect to count 13, the Crown alleges that Constable Senior used police databases to conduct unauthorized queries on the following people: Lorraine Aziz and Stephen Hatzes, Candace Fraser and Yasser Mansour, Simona Mara, Sherry Wafer, Danny Iandoli, Dominic Iandoli, Derek Iandoli, and Steve McHugh. With respect to count 14, the allegation is that Constable Senior disclosed confidential information gleaned from these queries to third parties, specifically to Lauren Aziz about Stephen Hatzes, to Candace Fraser about Yasser Mansour, and to Constable Timur Timberlatov about Simona Mara and her husband. A direct indictment was signed and filed with this court in early December 2020. So a direct indictment takes it directly to trial and skips over a prelim usually. So this trial was conducted over Zoom with a judge sitting without a jury. The trial consisted of the viva voce testimony of Undercover Operator 1 and Undercover Operator 2, Henry Wong, and a number of agreed statement of facts, which included a number of intercepted audio and text-based communications, video observations, data extracted from various phones, including text-based messages and photographs, emails, surveillance video, and photographs taken by police officers as part of the investigation. While the viva voce evidence was most certainly challenged at this trial, the interceptions, extracted data, video, and photos were not challenged at all. This court does note, however, that even though transcripts of the intercepted audio communications were prepared, it is the actual audio that is the true evidence, especially since there are significant errors noted in the transcripts. When quoting from various audio recordings, this court has done its best to decipher the actual words stated on the recording, as opposed to relying on the transcript. Therefore, while the page references will relate to the page numbers of the transcripts, the words quoted will sometimes differ from the transcripts. This is a fairly common problem with transcripts in that transcriptionists are not perfect. They're humans as well. So a lot of that went in by agreed statement of facts, just to avoid argument about, all of these documents. Probably saved a lot of trial time by doing so. All right, so facts. Many facts in this trial were not contentious, and a detailed recitation of the facts is necessary in order to understand the various allegations and charges. The facts found by this court will be provided chronologically, so that's nice because it's a lot easier to understand them chronologically. And as much as I would love to skip over some of these facts, they are really necessary to understand what exactly is happening here, what was going down, and why this case is what it is. So let's sort of dive in here. CPIC and Versadex queries prior to the formal investigations. This is before they've actually opened up this whole undercover mess that is going to be the main subject of things. So in 2016, she asked him to run her name and her ex-boyfriend's name, Stephen Hatzes, on a police database. She explained that she did this out of boredom and for fun. There's better things to do for fun, just saying, than accessing, confidential police databases. Some weeks later, Constable Senior told her about the results of his queries. She recalled that he referred generally to her ex-boyfriend's traffic tickets and to a specific occurrence that had taken place at Ms. Aziz's 22nd birthday party at an establishment called Marlowe's. An offline audit of Constable Senior's CPIC queries established that he queried Lorraine Aziz on October 25th, 2016 at 9:23 a.m., followed by Stephen Hatz's on the same date at 9:37 a.m. and 10:06 a.m. The queries were referred to and reproduced in Agreed Statement of Facts number 4, and they give the page numbers. Danny Iandoli are owned and operated Enviro Truck Wash. Danny Iandoli is related to Dominic Iandoli. Dominic Iandoli and Kevin Illies were friends. Steve McHugh was acquainted with Constable Senior. An offline audit of Constable Senior's CPIC queries established that he queried, and there's a list of queries here. Danny Iandoli, November 17th. Dominic Iandoli, November 17th. Derek Iandoli, November 17th. Steve McHugh, October 16th, the next year. So, looking up friends, which is a fairly common temptation, but of course, not allowable. Forensic examination of the Samsung phone seized from Constable Senior and searched pursuant to a general warrant revealed a folder entitled Greenhouse. It contained various photos of what appeared to be a marijuana grow operation, large quantities of cash, green trucks with the name Enviro Truck Wash, license plates, and several pictures of a police terminal containing information on various persons, including those listed above, produced as the result of a CPIC or Versadex query. Queries were referred to and reproduced in the Agreed Statement of Facts. Constable Senior was in an intimate relationship with Sherry Wafer. An offline audit of Constable Senior's CPIC queries established that he queried her on December 6, 2017 at 9:29 and 9:30 a.m. Candace Fraser knew Richard Sr., having met him in Toronto many years prior. She resided in Alberta. Despite not having seen him in person in over 10 years, she had kept in touch with him by phone and text. At some point, Ms. Fraser started dating a man named Yasser Mansour, and during a conversation with Constable Senior, she asked him if Mr. Mansour was legitimate. She recalled that Constable Senior told her that Mr. Mansour was okay. She also asked for Mr. Mansour's address, which she recalled Constable Senior provided her. An offline audit of Constable Senior's CPIC queries established that he queried the name Yasser Mansour on his police mobile working station on February 21st, 2018 at 10:36 a.m. Forensic analysis of the Samsung phone seized from Richard Sr. and searched pursuant to a general warrant revealed a folder titled Candace F. that contained an image of a CPIC query of Yasser Tassir Mansour with his date of birth, address in Edmonton, and an associated cell phone number. This query was referred to and reproduced in the Agreed Statement of Facts. So this is a lot of queries on police databases that should not have been made, because you shouldn't be looking up, your friends' friends or your friends' partners. All of this information is provided for police business. It's not provided so that people can check up on, romantic partners or anything like that. So all of these things are logged, but of course these logs are not going to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb most of the time. It's just that when we're talking about somebody who ends up under a great deal of scrutiny and investigation, then of course, they go through their log queries with a fine-tooth comb, and you can see that all of these people who he helped out were, of course, entirely willing to provide, details against him, it seems. So it doesn't seem to have worked out for him all that well in the end, and, I've got problems with this kind of querying, but quite frankly, I suspect it's fairly endemic. I don't think that this is anything unusual or rare. So now let's get into the secret spy stuff. Project Tedo. So UC1, that's Undercover Operator 1, became involved in the YRP investigation Project Tedo on Monday, June 18th, 2018, when he was contacted by Superintendent Brian Bigras. On June 19, 2018, he met with Superintendent Bigras and another deputy. He was asked to participate in a police corruption investigation and act in an undercover capacity. His cover story was that he had just come off suspension, was relocated to 5 Corps with his general duties being traffic and community-related offense. In fact, UC1 had been on suspension for several months as a result of criminal charges, which were withdrawn on May 2nd, 2018. So that's its own story that I have no information about because we don't know who UC1 is. But that's kind of an interesting detail, right? That UC1 was facing his own criminal charges. We don't know why they were withdrawn. We don't know anything about that. So his suspension was from October 20th, 2017 to May 2nd, 2018. The target of the investigation was Constable Richard Sr., who he knew in passing. The nature of the investigation was to investigate criminal code offenses of breach of trust. In cross-examination, UC1 testified that he understood the investigation related to Constable Sr. allegedly checking license plates that he had no valid reason to check. So the stuff that we've already talked about, but, we're talking about some fairly low-level corruption there. So as for his objective, UC1 testified that he was to insert himself or infiltrate the life of Constable Sr., befriend him, act as the undercover, and assist in collecting evidence. These were the original objectives he was given. However, he obtained further objectives as things continued from his handler, Detective Aaron Ladouceur. In cross-examination, UC1 agreed that he was not to suggest or create criminal activity. I will let you decide as to whether or not he suggests or creates criminal activity as we go, but it's a thing to think about as we go on. There was no timeline given to UC1 as to how long this investigation would take, but rather he would be involved as long as directed by his handler. So UC1 met Constable Sr. on June 27th, 2018. They had a friendly chat and exchanged personal phone numbers. There was no objective on that day, so just meeting, rapport building, etc. On Thursday, June 28th, 2018, the objective of UC1 was to meet with Constable Sr. and to continue to build rapport with him. That is, to make friends. They are to, he's trying to make friends. He's trying to become Constable Sr.'s buddy. On that day, they met up and partnered together. They did traffic enforcement and had social conversation. On July 5th, 2018, the objective of UC1 was to secure the 5-core vehicle that he and Constable Sr. would drive in and have the tech do an audio-video installation. UC1 did secure the vehicle that day, a 2009 Chevrolet Tahoe with license number BFVA055. He took the vehicle off-site to have the tech do the installation, which was done. Now, audio-video installation, that doesn't sound like much. This is, they're bugging the car. So it's got audio recording, it's got video recording. This car is now wired up so that it can be used as a spy machine. So that's what that audio-video installation means. They're not adding, something that they can watch movies in. On Sunday, July 8th, 2018, UC1 reached out to Constable Sr. using his undercover phone and requested to borrow Constable Sr.'s personal truck. UC1 stated in the message, "I need to move shit from Markham to Bradford. Need a friend with a truck, lol." After some exchange, Constable Sr. stated, "Brother, the truck is yours." Because, of course, they're partners, they're buddies. He trusts him, potentially with his life. And in fact, with actually his life here. So UC1 explained that the objective was to get Constable Sr.'s personal truck for the tech unit to install audio and video. Arrangements were made for UC1 to have the truck the next day. So Constable Sr. thinks he's helping his partner, move. He thinks he's doing him a solid. And meanwhile, his partner is having this thing also rigged up as a spy vehicle. So the work vehicle is rigged up for audio and video. His personal vehicle is now also rigged up for audio and video. On July 9th, 2018, the officers traded vehicle and the tech installation was performed on Constable Sr.'s truck, his F-150 pickup truck with Ontario license plate 8052052. Also on July 9th, 2018, UC2, Henry Wong, met with his cover team. The objectives given to him were to pose as a confidential informant, to build a relationship with and gravitate toward Constable Sr., and to eventually ask him to run a license plate through CPIC. Henry explained that he was to be pulled over by Constable Sr. In order to stage this, he was to drive in a manner that would result in his getting pulled over and which would justify him receiving tickets, but that in exchange for not getting tickets, he would offer to provide information about illicit drugs, cash, and firearms. Henry was to play the role of a mid-level Asian organized crime figure who was bringing in cocaine and fentanyl from China and distributing it. In order to hide the illegal activity, Henry purported to be importing tea. So they've got this entire fake crime boss here. So this is starting to sound a little bit like a Mr. Big sting. However, this is kind of an unusual variant. Normally those are not sort of done on police officers. And normally a Mr. Big sting is to reveal, to get somebody to reveal involvement in a crime that has already taken place, not to get somebody to commit a crime. Because here the objective is to try to get Constable Senior to run a license plate that he's not supposed to. That's the whole point of this. So on Thursday, July 12th, 2018, the objective for UC1 was to build rapport and to make another attempt at the confidential human source scenario. Again, the plan was that a traffic stop would be conducted. The person being stopped would have the cover story that he could not suffer getting another ticket and that he was looking for leniency. The person being stopped would gravitate to Constable Senior, because of course he would. UC1 would leave them to talk so that the relationship could happen. On that day, the plan was carried out. Constable Senior and UC1 were driving an unmarked police vehicle in Vaughan. Constable Senior was driving the vehicle. Henry drove in a controlled but speeding and somewhat erratic manner to catch their attention. He saw the lights on the cruiser go on, and he was then pulled over. Constable Senior and UC1 approached his vehicle and told him that he was driving like Mario Andretti. They asked for his papers, and he gave his registration and insurance. He said that his driver's license was in the trunk, and he exited the vehicle to get it. As part of standard practice, the officers went back to their police vehicle to run Henry's vehicle information. Henry was then told that he had 6 to 7 tickets that could be written for his violations, at which point Henry pleaded not to lose his license. He asked to speak to the officers in the police vehicle. The conversation in the police vehicle was recorded on the audio-visual hookup that they've got. So again, everything's already been wired for sound, so they know exactly what's happening in this conversation. How about I give you some information, take back the tickets, I just can't lose my driver's license, man. I need to make a living, I gotta feed my family. Okay, well, what do you want? Like, you want guns, you want dope, you want to counterfeit cash? At first, it was primarily UC1 engaged in the conversation with him. UC1 stated, "Sure, try me, tell me a little about both." Henry stated that if they gave him a number, he could give them a locker in less than an hour. Constable Senior suggested that if the information provided did not come through, or if it was not legitimate, they had options to proceed with the ticket enforcement. UC1 confirmed with Henry that if your hands are in it, I want nothing to do with it. Constable Senior then confirmed that Henry was at 9 points on his license, so 1 will kill him, 1 will end him. So if he gets another point on his license, he's going to be eating a suspension. So this is all, again, part of the setup. So Henry stated that he just wanted to deal with one person and said, "You, Richard, I want to deal with you because you look like someone I can trust." Again, this is purely because this is a targeted endeavor purely aimed at Constable Senior. Constable Senior only had one personal phone, so UC1 gave Henry his 2 phone numbers. Constable Senior stated the reason he got UC1's numbers was because they were encrypted, which was confirmed by UC1. More on that later. The plan was complete. Henry Wong was recruited as a source, and Constable Senior was to be the primary point of contact for Henry, initially through UC1's phone. After the traffic stop, UC1 and Constable Senior had a discussion about having encrypted phones. UC1 was attempting to relate the need for encrypted phones to his own experience relating to his criminal charge and suspension, and to convey the message that the police were unable to get into phones that are encrypted. UC1 stated that he returned to the issue of encryption because investigators were moving toward obtaining Constable Senior's phone to set it up to intercept the data. UC1 explained to Constable Senior, "You know you can't intercept it, it all wipes itself out. If the password's not given, there's a secondary password, so if it's not answered properly, if you fuck it up, if you don't know, it just wipes out." Constable Senior, who did not seem to know anything about this process, asked, "Right, how many tries?" UC1 provided further information. UC1 also stated, in relation to the confidential human source, "Henry, we need to go over the CHS. I don't know, that's the confidential human source. I don't know if I give him promises." UC1 suggested getting Henry carded. He further explained, so carded is sort of made official. UC1 asked if Constable Senior's phone was encrypted, and he responded, "No, I wish it fucking was." UC1 stated, "You should do it. I mean, get it done, eh?" To which Constable Senior responded, I plan to now. Very Canadian with the "get it done, eh?" All right, so there's some more discussion here, which I think we can skip over. So on the afternoon of July 13th, 2018, UC1 sent a text message to Constable Senior, stated that he was getting his iPhone encrypted and could get Constable Senior's done as well. There was no text response from Constable Senior. Skipping over some more. On Monday, July 16th, 2018, the objective for UC1 was to continue to build rapport with Constable Senior and to establish the cell phone scenario, which was to get Constable Senior's cell phone into the hands of the tech unit. So you see why they're trying to convince him to get his phone encrypted? It's not actually to get it encrypted. It's to get this phone as well to the tech guys. So they've already got truck number 1 and truck number 2 wired up. They want his phone as well. So on that day at 8:34 a.m., Sergeant Bedford sent an email to Sergeant Mike Boris, who was in charge of 5 Corps, copied to UC1 and Constable Senior, describing a fictional seizure of 2 loaded handguns, approximately $40,000 in cash, and a cocaine press made as a result of information obtained by Henry. The email stated in part, "I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate your officers, Richard Sr. and UC1, for their fine work last week. Please pass on my regards for some fine work, and if you have any further information from the CHS, please forward the information along." So keep in mind, this is probably now the pinnacle of Constable Senior's career. He's just gotten some information from this Henry Wong individual, which I skipped over, but the sort of exchange isn't super important here. However, because he gets this information, they pass it along, they do a fictional raid, so this raid never actually happens, it's just completely made up, and this is probably the high point of Constable Senior's career. Is, he's just had this big win. He's probably going to go out for drinks. He's going to have a celebration. This is a major thing to put on his resume, and it's complete BS. So already you can see that his life is pretty much becoming this entire fictional thing. His buddy is not his buddy. His lead source is not his lead source. His biggest career win is not actually a thing. Can you imagine if they didn't charge Constable Senior with anything? If at the end of the day they say, no, he's fine, he's clean. And then later they have to tell him, hey, all those things on your resume that you were planning to use to get promoted? They never happened. How do you think that conversation would go? I kind of wonder if that was ever on the table in that case, because, how would you actually do that? Like, would they just say, okay, we'll just leave that on his file that he got this big win? Or that's a weird question to me. So in response on the same day, Sergeant Boris requested to have the email added to their personnel files. So what's going on their permanent, on their permanent personnel files? Like, he might have ended up applying for jobs on the basis of this. This is weird. Anyway. There was a recorded conversation that day between UC1 and Constable Senior. This communication was intercepted over a body pack worn by UC1. UC1 described the tone of the conversation as proverbial high fives about the seizure. So they're celebrating. This is a big day for them, and it's, again, complete BS. There was also a discussion about the procedure in relation to handling a confidential human source. During the recorded conversation, the officers went to the Big Sizzler to eat, where they met other officers from 5 Corps, then traveled to the Pacific Mall in Markham, where they met another undercover tech officer. Constable Senior was led to believe that this was for the purpose of having his phone encrypted. Both officers provided their phones and passwords to an individual at the Pacific Mall. Of course, the phones were not being encrypted. In fact, officers were setting up Constable Senior's phone to be intercepted. So now he's handed over his phone because his buddy assures him this is the thing to do, and now it's also a bug. All right, skipping over some things here, talking about how they're installing all the bug on his phone. So UC1 continued reading the procedure relating to the handling of a confidential human source, including completing the various required forms, and it's policing. Policing is almost entirely forms. Occasionally they do some law enforcement, but mostly it's forms. Everything involves forms. It is the leading complaint of police officers all through Canada, I'm sure, is just how many forms they got to fill out. So carrying on. UC1 talked about the detective who oversaw source payment, Frank Badowich, coming out to pay the source, and that they could witness it, the requirement to have 2 officers at meetings with the confidential human source, and that the supervisor should be aware of such meetings. In his testimony, UC1 explained that most uniformed officers are level 1 handlers in relation to confidential human sources, and that Constable Senior was such an officer. However, he agreed that becoming a level 2 handler or an undercover officer required different training. He stated that he wanted to give Constable Senior information about what he could do and could not do. So he says he's not in a position to give Constable Senior any orders or direction or so forth, and yet he's positioned as a constable with superior knowledge and superior expertise, from whom Constable Senior is going to be taking learning and direction. So he might not be able to give formal orders to Constable Senior, but there certainly seems to be a disequality of power here, right? And so we have some other entertaining things here. Constable Senior noted some technical issues with his device, in that he was missing some files and applications, and later complained that his battery was being drained too quickly. I wonder why his battery's being drained too quickly. Is it because it's now always on and operating as a listening device? Yeah, that would do it. So he's kind of noticing these problems, but he's not tech savvy enough to figure out what they are. But you can see at this point, everything he does in life is probably surveilled. I mean, most of us carry our cell phones around pretty much all the time. And so it's going to be hard for him to have a conversation here that wasn't being monitored without his knowledge. All right, skipping ahead again a little further. On Monday, July 23rd, 2018, UC1's objectives were to continue to build rapport. Further, he was advised by his handler that Constable Senior was possibly involved in selling steroids. Up to this point, UC1 had been to the gym with Constable Senior 2 or 3 times and had breakfast with him almost every day or every other day. You can see how close this relationship is, right? It's a really close kind of thing. They're spending all their time together. There had been no discussion of steroids, and UC1 had not seen any evidence that Constable Senior was involved in steroids at all. In cross-examination, UC1 clarified that the objective was to get Constable Senior to sell steroids to him. So they've got no indication that he's doing this, at least UC1 doesn't, but now they want him to sell steroids. So it's gone from we want him to make a query that he's not supposed to now we also want to get him to deal some drugs. Both officers were at the office that morning. They talked a bit about exercising and supplements. UC1 testified that this conversation was an attempt to make a segue into a discussion about steroids. They partnered together that day. On Tuesday, July 24th, 2018, the objectives of UC1 were to arrange a meeting with the undercover tech to have Constable Senior's phone fixed, and also to work out with Constable Senior. The purpose of working out was to continue to build rapport and to see if there was any evidence in relation to steroids. So all of this is just towards that purpose. There's some more discussion with Henry. There's talking about only 1 or 2 guns seized and saying that they have to move fast or else the illicit guns or drugs will be moved. That's probably an explanation for Henry is often in this basically over-promising and under-delivering. So he says, oh, there's a huge amount of drugs and cash. And then the fictional thing that they find is not so much. And that's probably because if they found as much as this Henry Wong, figure had said that they would, these would be things that would make the news as major seizures, which of course they don't want to make a press conference about a seizure that never happened. That would be, that would potentially get reporters interested, and a story on, hey, the police reported a false seizure to us might also become a story, and they don't want that. Now, the next bit, which I'm not going to read, but I'm going to sort of describe here, is basically a discussion about buying food and drinks for this meeting that they're having with their undercover source, Henry. And so Mr. Senior is asking if he can, buy food and drinks and submit it as expenses. And he's saying, I'm making this up as I go along. I don't know what I'm doing. UC1 is saying, let him pay for dinner and drinks. We can't do those things. Those are inducements. We can't do that. So what we have here is Richard Sr. is saying, I don't really know the rules. I don't understand what we're supposed to be doing. Please teach me. Please tell me how to do this. And so it's another example of the sort of superior position of UC1 with respect to Richard Sr. Richard Sr. is relying on him to learn these things. And so it indicates, UC1 testified that it was bad practice to pay for food for the confidential human source. So that was something that, Constable Senior does not know. And so he's relying, he needs to learn this from UC1. We'll see that this learning relationship will start to break down over time. So on Friday, July 27th, 2018, the objectives for UC1 were to set up future workouts with Constable Senior, attempt to purchase steroids, meet with Henry, and allow Henry and Constable Senior to be alone. UC1 arrived at the station around 1 p.m. He secured an unmarked car so that they could travel to meet Henry. About 3 p.m., UC1 and Constable Senior met up in plain clothes and drove together in an unmarked car to meet Henry at Joey's at the Markville Mall. In the vehicle, they talked about workouts. UC1 entertained the idea of using steroids, also known as gear, so just street slang. Constable Senior objected to the idea, suggesting that he needed to work out harder and improve his diet. They had a general discussion about steroids in which Constable Senior told UC1 that steroids from Germany and India were the best, and also that he had a friend who had 3 or 4 months prior brought steroids into the country from Mexico. They talked about the fact that it was an offense to cross the border with steroids. Constable Senior did not offer any steroids to UC1. So we can see that there is some involvement here on Constable Senior's part beforehand. He says that he's got a friend who is committing these offenses. And one kind of wonders why a police officer has a friend who he knows to have committed offenses. You would think that that would cause a breakdown in the friendship relationship when some sort of arrest took place or some sort of investigation took place. This is a suggestion that a police officer knew about a crime and didn't do anything. I wish I could say I was shocked and surprised, but I'm not super shocked or surprised here. However, Constable Senior does not offer him any steroids. In fact, he says, don't do it. You should instead work out. You should improve your diet. Get bigger, healthy ways. So he's not saying, you want to buy some steroids. He's saying, don't buy steroids. That is a bad thing to do. We'll see how long that holds up and under what kind of pressure. So when they arrived at Joey's, Henry was already there. UC1 positioned himself at the edge of the booth while they talked. Henry thanked the officers for not giving him tickets and stated he was working on giving them more information on another locker that would contain multiple kilograms of cocaine, but no guns. He stated that he knew it would be there because he had sampled it, however, assured them that it was not his product. Henry provided the first name of the person who owned the storage unit. After the meal, Henry paid the bill as instructed by his handler. Henry testified that he did this to support the role he was playing as a mid-level Asian organized crime figure who had money. UC1 testified that it was not permitted for an officer to accept money or gifts from an informant. Henry also testified that a police officer should not allow the informant to pay, as this could compromise the officer, and that this was part of basic peace officer training. After Henry left, UC1 and Constable Senior moved to the bar side of the restaurant, had some drinks, and talked about other issues, including source handling and forms. UC1 advised Constable Senior that they had to complete the confidential human source forms and submit the paperwork. The conversation at Joey's does not appear to have been recorded. So this is kind of complicated. UC1 is now guiding him into things that maybe is, maybe are small violations here. They've got Henry paying the bill, but that's not supposed to happen. So Constable Senior has been relying on UC1 to tell him what to do and what not to do. But now UC1 is not sort of warning him that he's making a mistake, and in fact is kind of leading the way as this trusted figure. If he's the trusted figure and he's seeming to say that this is okay, by going along with it, that kind of is suggesting to Constable Senior that it's probably okay. This seems to me to be a little unusual. But UC1's goal is not to make Constable Senior be a good cop. UC1's goal is in fact quite the opposite. And this is very similar to the tactics that criminals will use in prisons to try to turn corrections guards. Basically, you want to start people making small transgressions so that you can then lead them into larger transgressions. So this is a key moment, notwithstanding the fact that it doesn't seem like much is going on here. Convincing him to sort of make a mistake is a big deal here. And you can see there's a little bit of a disconnect. Constable Senior is relying on UC1 to teach him how to do this right. And UC1's goals are not at all to teach him how to do it right. It's in fact to get him to do it wrong. This is concerning. So, commencing at 6:04:09 p.m., Henry sent a text to Constable Senior, and the conversation was as follows. Henry, storage locker is at 40 Metropolitan Road in Scarborough called Access Storage. All good, brother. Her name is Wang. Can't remember her family name. You have a name, phone number, and unit number? Cool, nice. You have a unit number? She is Asian, about 47 to 50 years old, long blonde extensions, and she was there yesterday afternoon around 2:45. And her contact number if you can. I don't remember unit number, but when you get in, first right and immediate left, it'll be 4th or 5th locker on the left. Her hubby Chai is a serious player, and they live in Scarborough, Midland, and Finch area. She's always in different rental cars, and she changes her phone all the time. She should be coming tomorrow afternoon, so you can get her while she's there, lol. Her hubby Chow has her moving product for her all the time. By the way, are you on WhatsApp? Yes, I'm on WhatsApp. Thanks, bro. What's appreciated. I'll hit you on WhatsApp later. Cool. And at 10:46 a.m., Detective Sergeant Bedford sent an email to Constable Senior and UC1 describing a fictional search and seizure at 40th Metropolitan Road in Scarborough of $75,000 in cash and 25 empty or discarded kilogram packages which appeared to have cocaine residue. The email stated in part, this CHS has provided some significant intelligence, and I encourage you to continue contact with them if possible. If you are drafting a YRP 50, please forward to me and any future information as well. So again, he's got a big bust that is a big career moment, and it's completely bogus. The 75 grand in cash never existed. And he's being told, you need to keep working with this confidential informant. This confidential informant is paying off. He's doing great things for your career. This is the best thing to ever happen to you. Keep working with them. So obviously that's going to turn off any skepticism he has and might tempt him in directions he might not otherwise have gone. So UC1 and Constable Senior arranged to go work out around 6 p.m. at Good Life at the Markville Mall. They met and worked out for an hour or an hour and a half. After the workout in the parking lot, UC1 revisited the idea of himself using steroids. He asked Constable Senior for information about the price of a cycle. Constable Senior responded, "How should I know?" UC1 stated, "You're the gym guy." Constable Senior then mentioned that he used to know someone, meatheads, a few months ago who could get steroids. They had a general discussion about different steroids, such as D-ball and Anavar. Constable Senior told UC1 that D-ball was bad for the body and that he should improve his diet first, including a proper nutrition plan and protein shakes. UC1 agreed in his testimony that by this time, he'd spent over 150 hours with Constable Senior, and when steroids were again brought up, Constable Senior's advice was better diet and legal supplements. So once again, Constable Senior is saying, hey, listen, don't do steroids. I might know some people who could get steroids, but you should do something else with your time and with your life, because this is not something you should be doing to yourself. So what we have here is over and over, this Undercover is trying to say, hey, I want to do steroids. And the Constable Senior is saying, don't do it. They're a bad idea. They're terrible. Why would you do this to yourself? But keep in mind, this is also kind of his best buddy at this point. This is somebody he's spending all day with. Somebody they have a position of trust, notwithstanding that it's a not justified position of trust. But I really didn't expect to be coming into this and having some sympathy for the guy. Because, right now, his entire life is a work of fiction. And when you think about it, 150 hours. Police officers get pretty decent money. How much money are they spending working on trying to turn this cop into a drug dealer? I mean, I like to think that our money should be going on more important things. It seems to me that if they wanted to do an audit here, they could do an audit of his, his records and find those things out. But when they start saying, hey, you need to convince this guy to start dealing drugs when his initial efforts twice are rebuffed. He says, can you sell me some drugs? And he's told no. Your best buddy in the whole world, a guy you depend on for your life, says, can you get me some steroids repeatedly? And he says, no, repeatedly. Eventually he's going to get maybe worn down. So there's a lot going on here. This is kind of an unusual file. This is not really what was presented in a lot of the news stories, which were just like, hey, this guy is, like this is some, the Shield kind of stuff going on. This is in fact something a lot more insidious, a lot more kind of, spy games going on. I will let you guys decide what you think as to whether or not this is appropriate, whether this is, what should be done. Because I'm kind of two minds here. A, it's really important that we have police officers who are, fastidiously honest. And maybe, police officers who can stand up to temptation and stand up to pressures. But at the same time, how far do we really want to go in terms of, trying to turn police officers? That's not really a question I'm going to have an easy answer to. I am, however, going to cut this off as sort of part one here. We'll return. We're about 27 pages in of 188. It may go a little faster as we go because we'll have a little bit more of the framework, but this is a really complicated tale. It's a really interesting one. This is fascinating what's going on, but it's going to take some time to go through, and I think that this is a suitable place to sort of stop for now. We'll come back to this fairly quickly. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please like this video. Please share it with your friends. Please subscribe to see more content. As I said, I'm going to keep going through this story. It is a wild and fascinating story, so I'm really excited to share it with you. I hope you'll stick around and keep watching. I also want to thank my Patreon subscribers at the $50 level: Sir Daniel Wicks of Alberta, Jason Elliott, Canada's National Farms Association, North Central Process Service, Kyle Martin, Jean-Guy Toussaint, Ivo Nedev, the CCFR, BCAMF.org, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Marc-Olivier Damour. And at the $20 level, Matt Ward, Mark Whittington, Dale Nesbitt, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, and Adam Meester, as well as a number of you at the $10 level who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge, and stay tuned. This story gets even weirder as we go. So, as I said, I'm really excited to share this one. It's a fascinating tale. So, till next time.